In the bustling city of São Paulo, the Maison D'Or restaurant stands out in the Jardins area as one of the most sophisticated and exclusive establishments in the metropolis. Helena Santos, a 23-year-old waitress who has earned her position through hard work and dedication, works within its walls, decorated with contemporary artwork and crystal chandeliers. Helena grew up on the outskirts of São Paulo, raised solely by her mother, who worked as a day laborer. From a young age, she showed extraordinary determination, studying at night and taking various training courses during the day. Her natural elegance and impeccable professionalism quickly made her stand out at Maison D'Or, where she has worked for 2 years. One Friday night, the restaurant is visited by Eduardo Mendes, one of the country's most influential businessmen. Known as much for his achievements in the real estate market as for his controversial behavior, Mendes is meeting with a group of international executives for a business dinner. Helena is assigned to the VIP table, and from the start, Mendes is hostile. His comments begin subtly about the deterioration of the level of service, but quickly turn into explicitly racist insults, wondering aloud how someone like her has managed to get a job in such a refined establishment. The whole restaurant seems to freeze. The other customers watch the scene with a mixture of horror and embarrassment, while the foreign executives shift uncomfortably in their chairs. Helena, maintaining an admirable dignity, continues her work with professionalism, although her eyes reveal the pain of the words that hit her like arrows. What nobody knows, however, is that among the foreign executives is James Morrison, a major American investor who is not only known for his commitment to social causes, but also for being married to a black woman and having 3 biracial children. His disapproving look at Mendes goes unnoticed, but his mind is already working on a plan that will drastically change the course of the evening. Meanwhile, in the kitchens of the Maison D'Or, executive chef Michel Bastos, who has always admired Helena's dedication, watches the situation with growing indignation. He knows he can't confront such an important client directly, but he can't ignore the inhumane treatment his best employee is receiving either. The tension in the room is growing by the minute, and what should be just another business dinner is about to become a defining moment in the lives of everyone present. What nobody realizes is that fate has prepared a twist that nobody could have foreseen, and that the consequences of that evening will have repercussions far beyond the walls of the Maison D'Or. The situation at Maison D'Or escalates when Eduardo Mendes, visibly upset after several glasses of wine, becomes even more abusive. Purposely spilling some red wine on the white tablecloth, he yells at Helena with a click of his fingers. "You should be used to cleaning, shouldn't you? You must have learned it from your mother," he says, causing deathly silence in the restaurant. The other customers stop eating, and some even begin to discreetly record the scene with their cell phones. James Morrison, the American investor, exchanges meaningful glances with his fellow executives. In English, he whispers something in his assistant's ear, who quickly starts taking notes on her tablet. Meanwhile, Helena, with trembling hands but an elegant posture, cleans the stain without saying a word. In the midst of this tense atmosphere, Michel Bastos, the executive chef, makes a bold decision. He asks his sous chef to take charge of the kitchen and goes to his private room, where he makes an important call. On the other end of the line, a female voice answers with authority. It is Luisa Mendes, Eduardo's sister and current CEO of the family business group. Simultaneously on social media, videos of Mendes' behavior began to go viral. The name of the restaurant and the hashtags "Your Racismo No" and "Justiça por Helena" quickly became trending topics. The restaurant's management began to receive calls from the press, while regular customers expressed their outrage on the establishment's social media. James Morrison, realizing the opportune moment, calmly stands up and makes a statement that no one expected. In accented Portuguese, he declares, "As a representative of Goldman Global Investments, I was here today to finalize the purchase of 30% of the Mendes companies. However, after witnessing this deplorable episode, I inform you that our group will reconsider this $2 billion investment." Eduardo Mendes' face instantly went pale. His business empire was in financial difficulty, and this investment was crucial to keeping his companies afloat, a fact he kept secret from the public. At that moment, the restaurant doors opened and Luisa Mendes, accompanied by her lawyer, entered the establishment. Her gaze was a mixture of fury and determination. She has always been the true administrative mind of the family, keeping to the shadows while her brother was the public face of the business. What nobody knows yet is that Helena harbors a secret that connects her story to that of the Mendes family in a way that nobody could have imagined. A secret that her mother has kept for decades and that is about to come to light, changing the destiny of all those involved forever. Luisa Mendes, with her imposing presence, walks through the restaurant towards her brother's table. The room is completely silent, except for the soft tinkling of her heels on the marble floor. As she passes Helena, she stops briefly there. Eyes meet, and something familiar in that gaze makes her heart tighten. "Eduardo, we need to talk," she says in a controlled but tense voice, in private. The businessman, still stunned by James Morrison's declaration, stands up unsteadily. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Michelle Bastos receives an unexpected call from Mrs. Maria, Helena's mother. The lady, in tears, reveals that she worked for 25 years as a housekeeper at the Mendes mansion. It was there that she met Jorge Mendes, father of Eduardo and Luisa, with whom she had a brief relationship while he was separated from his wife. In the restaurant's private room, Luisa confronts Eduardo. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? Not just with our company, but with our family." She then reveals something she has kept to herself for years. Among her father's documents after his death, she has found love letters exchanged with Maria and DNA evidence confirming the existence of a daughter. Back in the living room, Helena is called to the boardroom, where she finds her mother crying. "My daughter, I couldn't bear to see you humiliated like this. You need to know the truth." Maria then tells her the story she has kept for 23 years. Helena is the daughter of Jorge Mendes, making her Eduardo and Luisa's half-sister. James Morrison, observing the unfolding of events, remains in the dining room with his executives. He receives a message on his cell phone. His wife, a renowned lawyer specializing in civil rights, is already preparing legal action against Eduardo Mendes and offers Helena free representation. Chef Michel, who has always treated Helena like a daughter, now understands why Jorge Mendes, before he died, frequented the restaurant almost daily and always praised the young waitress's service, even from afar. Luisa, who was never satisfied with the way her father treated the former housekeeper, and with her mysterious dismissal, finally puts the pieces of the puzzle together. She had always suspected that there was more to the story, especially after finding old photos in which she noticed the resemblance between Helena and her father's youth photos. In the midst of this web of revelations, relationships, and secrets, a new family dynamic begins to form. Eduardo's prejudices are about to come face to face with a truth that will challenge everything he believes in, while Luisa sees an opportunity to right a historical wrong in her family. Chaos ensues when Eduardo, upon discovering the truth, bursts into the main hall of the Maison D'Or. His face is red with fury and disbelief. "This is a conspiracy, a plot to take my place in the company," he shouts, staggering between the tables. Luisa, keeping her composure, takes a brown envelope out of her briefcase. The DNA test is here, Eduardo. Dad made sure everything was documented before he died. Helena is our sister, whether you accept it or not. The most shocking moment comes when Helena, still in her work uniform, enters the room accompanied by her mother. Maria, having now regained her dignity, looks Eduardo in the eye for the first time in decades. Your father made me promise to keep the secret, to protect Helena from the prejudices of high society. But today, seeing my daughter humiliated by her own brother, I realize that silence has only protected the wrong people. James Morrison, who had been observing everything, stood up again. Gentlemen, I believe we now have a unique opportunity to turn this situation into something positive. He gestures, and his assistant projects the website of his international foundation supporting social causes and fighting racism on the restaurant wall. At that moment, Luisa makes a drastic decision. As CEO of the group, she makes a public announcement. From today, 30% of the shares that were to be sold to the Goldman Group will be transferred to Helena, their rightful heir. In addition, we will create a social inclusion program in all our companies. Eduardo, watching his world fall apart, tries one last trick. He reveals that the Maison D'Or restaurant secretly belongs to the Mendez Group and threatens to close it. However, Michel Bastos, the chef, smiles serenely as he shows on his cell phone the transfer of ownership of the restaurant, which took place that same morning. He had bought the place with the silent help of Luisa, who had been planning the move for months. The press, who were already at the door of the restaurant due to the viral videos, began to report the events live. Social media exploded with the story of the waitress who discovered that she was the heiress to one of the largest business groups in the country. But the focus quickly shifted to something bigger: the debate on structural racism and privilege. In Brazilian society, Helena, in the midst of the whirlwind of emotions, maintains the same dignity that she showed during the humiliations. She approaches Eduardo and, to everyone's surprise, says, "I don't want your money or your empire. What I want is for you to understand that the color of my skin has never defined my character or my abilities." In the weeks following the Maison D'Or incident, a profound transformation begins to take place in the lives of all those involved. Helena, now recognized as the legitimate heiress of the Mendez, decides to continue working at the restaurant, but also takes on an executive role in the business group's social inclusion program. Eduardo, forced to face the consequences of his actions, is confronted with a profound personal crisis. The group's board of directors, headed by Luisa, temporarily removes him from the presidency and requires him to participate in an intensive racial awareness and therapy program. Alone in his attic, he begins to relive memories of his father and becomes aware of patterns of behavior that he has unconsciously reproduced throughout his life. Luisa and Helena develop a close and genuine relationship. During their weekly lunches, they discover that they not only share DNA, but also a similar vision of social responsibility and business management. In Helena, Luisa finds the partner she has always wanted to transform the family legacy into something more meaningful. Maria, Helena's mother, receives an unexpected invitation from Luisa to return to the Mendez mansion, no longer as an employee, but as part of the family. Her presence causes a stir among former employees who begin to reveal other stories of discrimination kept hidden for years. La Maison D'Or, under the direction of Michel Bastos, becomes a symbol of transformation. The chef launches a vocational training program for young people from the suburbs, inspired by Helena's career. The restaurant is now known not only for its exceptional cuisine, but also for its commitment to social inclusion. James Morrison has kept his word in a surprising way. Instead of cancelling the investment, he proposes a restructuring. The $2 billion will go to a new branch of the group focused on social investments and sustainable development with Helena and Luisa at the helm. The press follows all the developments in the story, but something unexpected happens. Helena uses her new position not for her personal exposure, but to give visibility to other stories of discrimination and overcoming adversity. She becomes a respected voice in the debate on diversity in the business environment and is invited to international talks and events. In a particularly emotional moment, Helena organized a special dinner at Maison D'Or, bringing together employees from all the companies in the group. During the event, she presented a revolutionary project, the creation of an institute that would offer scholarships and mentoring to young Black people who wanted to become entrepreneurs or pursue an executive career. 6 months after the incident, the Maison D'Or is preparing for a historic evening. The restaurant will host the official launch of the Helena Santos Mendes Institute, an initiative that has already raised more than 100 million reais in investments for social inclusion projects. The room is unrecognizable. In addition to the usual high society guests, there are young entrepreneurs from the outskirts, community leaders and students who benefit from the new program. The decor mixes classic elements of the restaurant with works by contemporary Black artists. Eduardo, who has spent the last few months in an intense process of self-discovery and therapy, arrives early at the event. He expressly asks Helena for a moment alone with him before the ceremony begins. In the office of the restaurant, he hands her an old diary that belonged to his father, Jorge Mendes. "I found this while clearing out my office at the company," he says, his voice breaking. "Dad wrote about you from the day you were born. He watched you from afar, proud, but bound by the social conventions that I perpetuated in an even crueler way." The most powerful moment of the evening came when Helena took the stage to give her speech. She began by reading an excerpt from her father's diary. "Today my daughter was born. I cannot acknowledge her publicly, but I promise that I will do everything in my power to guarantee her future, even from a distance." As she speaks, the screens in the restaurant show images of Jorge Mendes at moments that no one had noticed before. He appears in the background at Helena's school graduations, at her ballet performances when she was a child, and even on the day she got the job. At Maison D'Or, Luisa then joins Helena on stage and announces a complete restructuring of the Mendes Group. The company will be the first major Brazilian corporation to have a board of directors with a majority of Black members. Eduardo, to everyone's surprise, is called to the stage. "My journey of deconstruction has only just begun," he declares, visibly moved. "But today, publicly, I apologize not only to my sister Helena, but to all those who have ever suffered from attitudes like mine." He then announces that he will donate his share of the shares to the Institute. The climax comes when Maria, Helena's mother, reveals her own surprise. She has kept all the letters that Jorge Mendes wrote to Helena, one for each birthday, and which were never delivered. There are 23 letters, each of which contains not only words of love, but also actions by the company, kept secret over the years. James Morrison, who returned to Brazil especially for the event, announced that his international foundation will reproduce the model of the Helena Santos Mendes Institute in other countries, starting with the United States and South Africa. During the celebration at the Maison D'Or, a familiar and unexpected face appeared among the guests. Sofia Mendes, ex-wife of Jorge Mendes and stepmother of Eduardo and Luisa. Since the death of her husband, she had remained secluded, living in Europe, but recent events have brought her back to Brazil. Sofia asks for the floor and, to everyone's amazement, reveals that she has always known about Helena. "Jorge told me everything on his deathbed," she declares in a firm voice. He also gave me something that will change everything we think we know about this family. He opens his bag and takes out a USB memory stick, explaining that it contains Jorge Mendes's true will and testament, drawn up weeks before his death. The document was never presented because Sofia needed to make sure the family was prepared for its contents. In the will, Jorge not only acknowledges Helena as his daughter, but also reveals a meticulous plan to transform the business group. The will contains a specific clause. The Mendes Group would only retain its government contracts and tax benefits if it implemented a comprehensive program of diversity and historical redress. Jorge had been researching the impact of structural racism on Brazilian companies for years and was planning a corporate revolution. Even more surprisingly, Sofia revealed that Jorge had set up a secret fund, managed by her over the last few years, which had accumulated more than 5 billion reais, earmarked exclusively for social and racial inclusion projects. The fund was waiting for Helena to be recognized by her family. Eduardo, already transformed by his journey of self-discovery, receives another blow when he discovers that his father had foreseen his resistance. In his will, Jorge wrote specifically for him, "Son, your greatest challenge will be to overcome the prejudices that I myself helped to cultivate in you. Your redemption will be your greatest legacy." The most shocking revelation comes when Sofia plays a video recorded by Jorge before he died. In it, the patriarch of the Mendes admits that his own fortune originated from the work of his enslaved ancestors and that he spent years developing a plan of historical reparation. The Helena Santos Mendes Institute, which was already ambitious, has now become the largest corporate project for social transformation in Latin America. With the fund revealed by Sofia, the institute will have the resources to influence the lives of millions of people. James Morrison, impressed by the revelations, immediately doubles his initial investment and proposes a global partnership. His foundation offers its international structure to extend the reach of the Mendes project to other continents. 1 year after the revelations, the Maison D'Or has become more than just a luxury restaurant. It has become the symbolic headquarters of a business revolution. Helena, who now chairs the board of directors of the Mendes Group together with Luisa, has implemented changes that have had repercussions throughout the Brazilian market. The former restaurant now houses the headquarters of the Helena Santos Mendes Institute, which has benefited more than 10,000 young black people with scholarships and mentoring. The space retains its refined characteristics, but has acquired a new identity, blending its original sophistication with elements of Afro-Brazilian culture. On his journey of transformation, Eduardo surprised everyone by becoming one of the main organizers of diversity policies in the business world. He uses his own story of transformation to raise awareness among other executives, leading workshops on privilege and structural racism in the country's largest companies. Sofia Mendes, fulfilling Jorge's last wish, creates a commission of historians and researchers to map and publicly recognize all the families who were enslaved and contributed by force to the construction of the Mendes Empire. The group creates a program of historical reparations, offering scholarships and business opportunities to the identified descendants. Maria, Helena's mother, becomes a central figure in the development of the Institute's social programs. Her life experience and practical wisdom help shape initiatives that truly meet the needs of disadvantaged communities. Chef Michel Bastos expands his vocational training program, which now includes a completely free gastronomy school for young people from the outskirts of the city. La Maison D'Or becomes a center of excellence in vocational training, and several of its former students open their own successful restaurants. James Morrison and his foundation reproduce the model of the Helena Santos Mendes Institute in several countries, creating a global network for the social transformation of companies. The Brazilian project becomes a case study at Harvard and other leading universities around the world. On a special evening to celebrate the Institute's first anniversary, Helena brings together all the protagonists of this story at an intimate dinner in the former private room of the restaurant, now transformed into a memorial that tells the story of the transformation of the Mendes family. During the dinner, she opens the last letter left by her father, scheduled to be delivered on that specific date. In it, Jorge Mendes writes, "My daughter, your birth was not an accident of fate, but an opportunity to correct decades of injustice. You are the bridge between two worlds that should never have been separated. 5 years have passed since that fateful night at the Maison D'Or. The restaurant, which has become a symbol of social transformation, maintains its gastronomic excellence while serving as an inspiration to establishments throughout the country. Internationally recognized as one of the most influential executives in Latin America, Helena divides her time between managing the Mendes Group and giving lectures all over the world. Her story has inspired a documentary series and a best-selling book that has become required reading in business courses. The Helena Santos Mendes Institute has already graduated its first class of executives, and its graduates hold leadership positions in major Brazilian companies. The mentoring program, initially focused only on young Black people, has been expanded to include other minorities underrepresented in the business environment. Eduardo, transformed by the experience, married a history teacher specializing in African studies, whom he met during his awareness-raising process. Together, they run an educational project that brings discussions on diversity and inclusion to elite public schools. Luisa has extended the group's reach beyond Brazil's borders, establishing partnerships with African companies and creating a corridor of economic development between Brazil and Africa. The Mendes Group's inclusive management model has become a global benchmark in corporate governance. Maria opened her own NGO, focused on training Black women for leadership positions. Her work with single mothers in the outskirts has received recognition from the UN, and she often travels around the country sharing her story of resilience and overcoming adversity. Chef Michel Bastos transformed his gastronomy school into an international gastronomy university, where students from different countries learn not only culinary techniques, but also the importance of social responsibility in gastronomy. Before she died, Sofia Mendes left a will stating that her personal fortune should be allocated in its entirety to a fund for research into race relations in Brazil, thus perpetuating the legacy of transformation initiated by Jorge. One Sunday morning, Helena visits the Maison D'Or before opening time. As she walks through the empty lobby, she stops in front of the mural that tells the story of her family's transformation. There, among old photos and newspaper clippings, her old waitress. Card is framed next to the first letter her father ever wrote to her. At that moment, she receives a message on her mobile phone. The Mendes Group has just been chosen by the UN as a global example of a transformative company in the fight against structural racism. Smiling, Helena looks at the portrait of her father on the wall and whispers, "We did it, Dad. We made your dream come true." At the entrance to the restaurant, a golden plaque displays the establishment's values, which end with a phrase that has become the motto of the entire organization. True wealth does not lie in what we possess, but in our ability to transform lives. And so, what began as a night of humiliation became a story of redemption, demonstrating that sometimes you have to face the worst of humanity to bring out the best in it.